water. Okay. Good morning. I am Patric Lyra Lanier. That's a two-name first name. Patric Lyra like Mary Beth. I run the most robust LGBTQ+ program along the coast between San Francisco and Los Angeles. I've done so with this name for the past 3 years, as well as 1 year before that, under a different name, a name given to me at birth. That name is not relevant. The programs of our 7-person team at Pacific Pride Foundation reach just over 10,000 people a year, and I adore my job. I never have to explain my name to these 7 colleagues or to many of the clients supported by my program. We're all too concerned with our shared push for the full human rights that lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, non-binary, queer, intersex, asexual, and there are more words, and so many other individuals lack in the United States and in the world right now. I am Patric Lyra Lanier. That's a two-name first name, Patric Lyra like Mary Beth. I am not a man, I am not a woman, but there's hair on my face. So people decide, sometimes subconsciously and sometimes consciously, that my Lyra is optional. This is because, in this moment, in this language, in this place, names that end in open vowels are gendered as woman, even though they don't have the correlating brains to make them so. After all, most words are just made of letters, well, all words are made of letters, that you can arrange and rearrange, as in the game of Scrabble. Words don't actually have a gender identity, any more than they have a favorite color or a favorite food. But again, because I have hair on my face, and in this moment we pretend women don't, and we also believe Lyra is a woman's name, I am often called just that first part of my first name. The part that bites. The part that polices and says, get in line with the other boys and stop crying, Patric. Now, if I played the editor without malice, never intending harm, never intending it, but nonetheless, if I deleted your name, how would you feel? I am Patric Lyra Lanier. That's a two-name first name. Patric Lyra, like Mary Beth. I say this footnote of self about 5 times a day to others. I repeat it, even now, to grant committees and executive directors who've known me for 3 years with this two-name first name. They profess to care about LGBTQ+ children like the one I used to be, but not enough to get my name right, apparently. Our LGBTQ+ and allied children watch this. And as they are wired to, they make careful note of who claims to be safe and who actually isn't. I am Patric Lyra Lanier. That's a two-name first name. Patric Lyra, like Mary Beth. No, you can't hear this name in print. I, or someone who knows me, has to say it out loud. Lyra, not Lyra. If it's your first time, and you hear my footnote, and you mess it up, I don't get angry. I correct you gently with a smile on my face. Again, I taught preschool for 10 years, so I have a lot of patience. If it's your second time, and you hear my footnote, and you mess it up, I feel frustrated, but I don't lash out. After all, people already think transgender folks are angry all the time, and I don't want to add to that stereotype, even though our anger is largely based in trauma survival. So I just smile again, though more uncomfortably this time, and pray that someone else corrects you. If it's your third time, and you hear my footnote, and you mess it up, I begin to disappear. Me, with my 2 degrees, my therapist license, my 35 years, my plethora of coping skills. when the name that calls my soul into existence is nowhere to be heard, as a social creature dependent on words, I very naturally cease to exist. And I can hear you now, because I hear this all the time. Perhaps you're saying, but we're so much more than words, Patric, Lyra. And we are. But to suggest that words aren't primary, that they aren't a core part of our rituals, so many of which center on naming, is at best utterly daft. Sorry. If words were not central to the being of human, we would just be sitting here today and every day, every moment, in absolute silence. We would have no lyrics, no songs, no thoughts, no poetry. We would have no names. I am Patric Lyra Lanier. That's a two-name first name. Patric Lyra, like Mary Beth. I'm a survivor of verbal abuse. Not just at the hands of my biological parents when I came out as a teen, but at the hands of past partners, at the hands of boys who become men parroting with great terror what the grown-ups taught and teach them. To suggest I simply look past words, as many have suggested to me, is to suggest I lobotomize myself with the snap of a finger, that I simply reroute all my neural pathways in one nonsensical nanosecond. So I no longer notice the words that, in practice, actually do confine, words that functionally make or take away laws, words that have been used against my LGBTQ+ people, whatever their letter, for generations. Words like unnatural, phrases like it's a choice, you're just being difficult. You just can't make it easy, can you? And I hear you again with your good intentions. People don't mean it, though. People aren't trying to hurt you when they get your name wrong. I know. But my nervous system, and yours by design, doesn't. Our nervous systems are wired to seek safety via belonging to and being accurately mirrored by a group. Intent not only paves the way to both heaven and hell, but has little to do with how we feel when we're misnamed and misgendered. It actually doesn't matter how good your intentions are. The pain of an incorrect name still stands alone. So to avoid that pain and to give people a helping hand, I repeat my footnote of self over and over again, hoping that those who pretend to listen will show they actually are by using the correct name without a single mistake moving forward. In other words, by consistently welcoming me into the fold. I am Patric Lyra Lanier. That's a two-name first name. Patric Lyra, like Mary Beth. I am exhausted. This is not a sermon about beating up newbies I've met for the first time. This is also not a sermon about grammar, or how if I just hyphenated my first name, it would make such a difference for everybody. Spoiler alert, I've tried writing my name that way on forms, and still my Lyra is erased. I've never asked for suggestions about my first name from the general public, but trust me, when I say the general public has offered me innumerable ideas on how to change my name, again, to be more palatable or understandable, or easier. But easier for who? I am Patric Lyra Lanier. That's a two-name first name, Patric Lyra, like Mary Beth. I am not here for your convenience. You are not, in actuality, my audience. You're supposed to be my tribe. You, general you, whatever you are, whoever you are whatever you name yourself. And though I will not remember every name of every person I meet here by the end of the day, I will remember your faces, many of which I already know, and I remember many names too. And the new people I meet, when we meet again in this tiny town that adorably thinks of itself as a big city. It's real cute, Santa Barbara. When I meet you again, rather than speak you incorrectly, I will say, I'm so sorry I forgot your name, but I remember your face. It's so nice to see you. Can you remind me of your correct name? I don't want to make that mistake while we talk right now. I am Patric Lyra Lanier. That's a two-name first name. Patric Lyra, like Mary Beth. You might have a name I didn't grow up with knowing how to pronounce. And if your name is, for example, Aurelia Ariana, that is how I will practice to pronounce it. I will not look at your face or speak of you when you are not in the room as Aurelia Ariana. Even when my tongue trips and tangles, I will be humbled by knowing your name is richer than I can speak correctly. And my effort to get it right will not stop until I do. It's important that I, as a white person with an Anglo-European name, keep trying and self-correcting and practicing pronunciation when I am alone, because this is one simple way I can help stitch together our all-too-tattered quilt of human belonging. Pro tip, flashcards help. I am Patric Lyra Lanier. That's a two-name first name. Patric Lyra, like Mary Beth. In college, I was blessed to take a workshop with Dr. Bernice Johnson Regan, one of the founding members of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee and of the Black women's a cappella group Sweet Honey in the Rock. As our timid undergraduate selves spoke our names into the circle, Dr. Regan let us know that introductions would simply have to be repeated. I'm paraphrasing, but she said something that altered me forever. And that something went like, your name, in all its fullness, in its specificity to you, must be spoken with a robust enough presence that the sound of it clears way in the room for your body and for your breath. There are too many people in the world who will try to diminish you. Let your name take up space. Try again to speak your name fully and robustly. My polysyllabic, crisply consonant, variously voweled first name is a mouthful. It requires a deep breath. It requires you to sometimes slow down in order to get it right. But I didn't name myself this in order to be your mindfulness bell or to be a diva. Although with Beyonce as an example, who wouldn't want to be a diva? I used to have a colleague named Deja who's amazing, and she would say she was the one-name diva like Beyonce, and I was the two-name diva like Lady Gaga. But when I introduce myself as Patric Lyra Lanier, I'm doing so as an exercise that moves against every inward terror I still feel about taking up not just too much space, but enough space. Because of this, I have recently asked those who are not in my intimate circle to stop taking liberties by shortening my name to just PL, like for those people I've just met for the first time. That tiny little abbreviation, something I used to offer people I just met to make my name easier, actually correlates to a tightening of the muscles around my ribs. That shortened name actually shortens my breath. And aside from the fact that PL stands for profit loss, the wisdom shared by Dr. Bernice Johnson Regan those many years must be honored. I must, and you must, honor the full breadth and breadth of my whole first name, and I thank you for doing so. I am Patric Lyra Lanier. That's a two-name first name. I cope with trauma less through fighting or fleeing or freezing, but primarily through tending and befriending my aggressors. To placate them, I learned to be one of the smartest in the room. To assuage their anxieties about my differences, I learned to make jokes that elicited warmth in that person who had more power over me. This core patterning means I trend toward codependency's new and more accurate name, which is pathological accommodation. To stay safe in a world that still murders LGBTQ plus people at unseemly rates, I have accommodated the discomfort of others for far too long, all in the name of safety. The most primary evidence of this is that I've wanted to write and share this sermon with you for the past 3 years, but I was afraid of offending folks. Afraid because I need to be a part of a group, and because some of you, both in the room but also people who will see this online, may have power you might yield to harm me, explicitly or implicitly. So I tend, and I befriend, and I smile, and my inward collapse with every slicing, solitary Patric is invisible to you. You don't know, but I've had to step away from grassroots spaces where language justice is a spoken priority, to hide in one of 2 wrongly gendered bathrooms just so I can quietly cry to myself. Because in a space that values what I do, which is the inclusion of all languages, my own language of self, written on a placard, written on a name tag, explained in person to an entire room of people multiple times, still goes unspoken. And yet, I am called to collaborate at the sacrifice of myself. I'm not so sorry to share this morning that I no longer place myself on others' altars. I no longer wait like a good boy for that final fatal blow. Because I am Patric Lyra Lanier. My name leapt out of the darkness I walked into when a teenager in my youth group asked if I too was transgender, non-binary, neither man or woman. That darkness they invited me to swim in didn't scare me. It actually welcomed me warmly to see indigo, purple, and navy shades of self I'd been unable to discern before. Now I already knew how to listen in the depths, like the humpback whale tattooed on my arm, listening to the ring of a cell phone. No. It's okay. But as I swam slowly with them, these wiser children invited me to claim truths that had been mine since my own childhood anyway. And in that oceanic dark, the name that sang back to me was Lyra, but not only that. It was Patric Lyra, a lilting tilt of sound that feels like the exact vibration of my soul. Crisp but open, defined but malleable. Wholly me, as intended by the creative and genderless wildness that I call God. I am Patric Lyra. My name is a prayer and a poem that I believe speaks me into existence in a world where words are too often the building blocks of so much obvious hate. I know this all can be confusing, but maybe the request to get my name right is merely an opportunity to grow human rights from the ground up, person to person, to practice actual coalition and not the back-patting narcissism of well-branded coalitions or collaborations. No one expects perfection, and I know that we all can do better. I know I'm ready for this serious work. I want to bear actual witness to you and want you to bear accurate witness to me. It won't be easy. But then, when did the world ever promise to be? What goodness and beauty and life-changing art ever arose from ease alone? So I wonder, are you ready to join me? And if you are, tell me, what's your name?